What if that quiet voice you keep ignoring isn't random at all? What if it's guidance, trying to keep you on the right path? Tonight, we're exploring intuition, inner judges, and how learning to trust them could change everything.
Welcome to ParaTruth.
How's it going, ParaTruthers? Welcome to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. My name is Justin, and today I'm talking to Eboni Banks about her book, Your Intuitive Nudge. Eboni is a mystic, survivor, writer, author, and embodied teacher who has connected with her intuition since childhood. The traditions of mysticism, healing, and wellness are part of Eboni's lineage on both sides of her family. As early as the 1940s, her maternal great-grandmother read palms, and her late father was a social worker who practiced hypnotherapy. This rich family lineage in mysticism creates a connection that Eboni carries forward in multiple ways. She is also a Reiki Level 11 practitioner, certified Bhakti yoga teacher, and yoga nidra instructor. Eboni, welcome to ParaTruth Reborn.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hearing that intro, I need to change the word survivor because people are kind of like, survive what? We're all survivors. And unless you know my whole story, it really isn't relevant. And I don't even resonate with that word anymore. I feel like I'm more the warrior at this point, all the healing I've had to do. So thanks for reading that.
I mean, there's always kind of a negative connotation when you hear survivor because it means you survived something, and it's usually something really bad. So yeah,
I mean, it is, it is traumatic. It's been a lot of my life, but we don't have to talk about all that unless you want to.
Right.
Left out the part that I'm also clairtangent, which I guess you're reading that from my website, and it doesn't say that in that description because on my website you can book a reading with me and there's all this other stuff, but I'm also clairtangent.
Okay. So for those that don't know, what does clairtangent mean?
So clairtangent is one of the 7 intuitive clairsenses that we know of right now. Future humans will probably have many more, but I know they're typically 7. And it means clear touch. So the word clair means clear, and then the ending of the word tells you what it's associated with. And tangent connects to touch, and it's in the same family as clairvoyance, which means clear vision.
Okay. Well, then I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the clairs. Clairtangent is one of my abilities. I can touch a lot of things and pick up on energy off of them. I am also clairsentient, clairaudient, so it builds quickly though.
It does. Well, the way I process the clairs, I think everyone is clair something.
Yeah.
Whether they know it or not. And I think most people are more than one. Because of the 7 intuitive clair senses, 5 of them directly correlate with our 5 primary senses of touch, taste, hear, smell, and see. And I kind of think about our primary senses as like the gateway to get to your intuitive clair senses, just bringing more awareness to how you're experiencing those things and what is happening in your nervous system, in your body, in your spirit when you are experiencing those things. So everyone's got it.
Yeah, for sure. I've thought that a long time. People want to say that they're not this or that, but I believe everybody is. They just haven't honed in on them.
Yeah, or they don't believe in it, or it's so many reasons why people don't. But future humans are going. It's going to be like a natural way of life,
Right. So, what made you want to write Your Intuitive Nudge?
Oh goodness! Well, my agent asked me to. Because initially I wrote a memoir, and the memoir, my family, as you were reading in the intro, kind of interesting folks, my great-grandmother reading palms in the Jim Crow South, to white people who were lined up at her door, piled up in her living room, waiting in their cars to see her. A very unusual life for a Black woman in the South during the Jim Crow South, So, but the memoir is not so much, it's really about my healing journey. So I had written this memoir. And I got an agent for it because she just really liked me and she liked how I talk about dark and light because the memoir is called Copy the Sky and it's all about harmonizing dark and light. And, but she represented self-help books. And at the time I didn't know anything about publishing. So I thought, oh, okay, any agent, right? I'm grateful that somebody sees enough value to be my agent,
Right.
but she wasn't able to pitch to successfully pitch the memoir because her focus and her experiences with self-help books. So she said, why don't you write a self-help book? And I can get that. Let's do a self-help book. So I only wrote it because she asked me to. I really had no intention of writing it, but it wrote itself so easily and it was so much fun to write and to get all of that out of me because I basically just wrote how I really healed from my trauma because I credit my intuition with my ability to heal myself. And I really just wrote how that happened for me, how I experienced that in like a really practical way with steps and exercises and things so people can practice their own intuition on their own time in their own life,
Okay. Now, what is an intuitive nudge and how did you come to recognize your own?
Oh, goodness. Such a long story. So I've been intuitive since I was a child, and I knew this about myself as a child. Like I knew that what that looked like for me as a child. And my memory is not, super expansive around my childhood experiences, but it looks like me knowing things that people didn't tell me. I just thought I was bad because of it. I didn't know how I knew. And I grew up in a Christian church. So I was just like really confused. I was getting some messages about the non-physical world from church and learning about God and, angels and things associated, but no one was talking about what I was experiencing with my intuition. So, how did I recognize my intuitive nudge? I mean, when I was little, and I mean like 6 or 7, I knew it was something that was like supportive of me, but I didn't have the language or know that it was called intuition. And I kind of treated it like, yeah, okay, go away. Like I didn't want to receive the information because I didn't know what to do with it and I didn't understand it. And as like during my teenage years, I kind of thought it went away. That's literally how I thought about it. I thought it left me because I wasn't having the same kinds of experiences that I was having as a child. And then, and I was an interesting child. So also around the age like 6 or 7, I would sit in my room and I would wonder where I would be if I wasn't on earth and I didn't have a body. I would literally like try to figure it out, And what always came up for me was that what I imagined as a child was I would just be in like this very dark space. I knew I would exist still. I knew I would still exist, but of course not without a body. And it was just like this dark space of like nothing, where everything and nothing coexisted. I think I was tapping into the void, but of course I didn't know, right? So then fast forward teenage years, I thought that it left me is how I thought about it. And then when I was in my 20s, I met like-minded people who introduced me to crystals and astrology and all these things. And they understood so many things about how I naturally process life, like things like knowing that I chose my parents, having that understanding of having an understanding of reincarnation. Just all these things that I just always knew and knew were true, but I didn't really talk about them because I didn't have anyone to talk about them with. So I guess my nudge started showing up, I mean, really as a child, and it was more, yeah, I would say as a child, there's 1 or 2 experiences that I remember distinctly having as a child. So I would say it started when I was around that 6 or 7 age. And then when I was in my 20s and I was learning about these things and tuning into crystals and all this stuff, it was starting to kick in again very strongly.
Okay. No, I mean, everybody has intuition. A lot of people call out like a gut instinct, whatever you want to call it. Why do so many people distrust their intuition though, even when it's, accurate and it's such a strong feeling?
I mean, the reason I think people don't trust their intuition is because they don't trust themselves, and we have a lifetime of examples where we didn't trust ourselves, that we blame ourselves for, we're hard on ourselves, we beat ourselves up, all the woulda, coulda, shoulda moments in our lives. And so I think for whatever reason, we're just really hard on ourselves. We pay more attention to all of those things. And instead of trying to kind of create new neurons in our brain that tell us that we do trust ourselves, because there are a million ways that we also demonstrate that we do trust ourselves, probably more ways that demonstrate that than the ways that demonstrate that we don't. But for whatever reason, like we hang on to those other reasons. And I think for some people too, it's really connects to shadow work. And a lot of it is subconscious because people don't even know why they behave in a way that is hurtful or to themselves or to other people. Like they haven't done that deep inquiry to get to, oh, I'm still responding to this thing that happened to me when I was 8, and it's a lot of work. Healing is work. Healing is work. Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't want to do that work to get there, and I don't even think you have to do all that work, but I think you do have to have a conscious awareness that, you are a divine being first and foremost. And that part of you is the greater part of you, because once all this beautiful body that we have dies, that part of us continues, So it's kind of like a shift in your logical thinking too around who you are and how you see yourself,
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you said that, because something that I had fought for years is going to counseling. And the reason that is I had such I wouldn't say bad experience, but every counselor I had went to never really felt like they were out for my better good, or even giving me the tools to do what I needed to do. Mm-hmm. So when my wife told me maybe you should get counseling, and she had started herself, to connect with my counselor that I have now and have somebody who actually gets what I'm saying and not only lets me vent, but also ask, how do I do this? How do I fix this? Yes. And something that I really do want to start doing is shadow work. We had a guest on last year, and she did a really good book where it's part telling you what to do, and then it gives you journaling and all that stuff to do. Nice. So I really think that a lot of people, especially with what's going on in the world right now, really need to embrace that and understand that there is healing in all of that.
There is. I feel like what's going on right now, like in the US, like we're doing our shadow work collectively. Like it's all showing up, all the things that all the previous years and leaders, didn't really address. Like this leader is putting it all in our face, and I'm actually grateful for it, because we can't progress unless we get to these things, there's no way forward unless you actually get to your truth, and getting to your truth can be hard if it's your personal truth or like our collective truth as Americans,
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. You learn that as you grow up in the church, and even though I'm not a religious person anymore, I'm still very spiritual, and I understand that everything does happen for a reason. Yeah. Does it suck a lot of times? Absolutely, it does.
Absolutely. Yes. But when you get to the other side, and I'm not religious at all. I mean, just because I was raised in the church, I haven't been religious for years. Like I said, I don't believe in religion really. Mm-hmm. But I understand the purpose that religion has for people. Right. For me, it served a great purpose as a child, and now and helping me understand that non-physical exists in some way. It is a thing, but I don't process it at all the way the church taught me how to, or maybe not nearly as I'm much more expanded, I guess, in my view of things. But what was it? What made me say all that? We were talking about shadow work, and what did you say that made me say all that?
Just going through counseling and healing yourself.
Yes. So what I learned in my healing journey is really counseling is beautiful, and I was totally against it initially. And the first day I went to a session, I was like bawling, and after bad mouthing it, like I don't need therapy. bawling and had like such an amazing breakthrough the first day. So I totally believe in therapy. Plus, I'm from a family of social workers, right? Like folks in my family were doing lots of therapy. But what I learned in my healing journey is, a tip that I can share is really focus on your relationship with yourself. And you can do that in small ways that have nothing to do with anyone else, that no one else even has to know about, and that your counselor, your therapist may not be able to guide you because again, when you focus on your relationship with yourself, it connects to your intuition. And intuition is all about your relationship with yourself, And so when you allow yourself to like really nurture, love, and care for yourself in deep ways and small things like going to bed and getting, X amount of sleep or, using your voice and speaking up as you need to, as appropriate, right? I guess that's something that therapists help with. I want to give some non-therapy examples. Maybe it's something as small as, creating a self-care routine for yourself before you get to bed, or not watching certain television shows, right, that are disturbing. Or we all know what our micro things are that would be helpful for us to either do or not do. So like kind of just doing those things and sending that message to yourself that you're nurturing and caring and loving for yourself in that way, because there's so much self-communication that happens between our mind, our brain, and our bodies. I'll say brain and body. And maybe mind, because brain and mind can be two different things, but that might be another conversation. But there's so much self-communication that we are having with ourselves all day long. It's nonstop. And so when we choose to do things that are more loving, even if it's a small thing, and I don't mean superficial things like, I don't know, with women, a lot of people think about self-care, like going to the spa, getting a massage, and those things are helpful. But what's more helpful is like being patient with yourself, giving yourself grace, having empathy, being forgiving, like to yourself, like those kinds of things. Are really powerful ways that we self-communicate and that we send messages to our brain and our body that we are loving ourselves. And then when we send that message and we keep sending messages, it gets to a point where it starts to overcome, and the only message we're sending to ourselves is that loving message. So, it's so important to have a really healthy, strong relationship with yourself first and foremost,
Okay. Now, a lot of people probably question this a lot. How can someone tell the difference between intuition and anxiety, or any other feeling for that matter?
That is such a good question. And so much of intuition and receiving your messages from yourself. And that connects to the self-communication I was talking about, right? So when you're when you're loving on yourself and you're sending a message to yourself that you love yourself, it also supports you in connecting more with your intuition. And so discernment is really important, I think, in any kind of spiritual work, right? You really have to be mindful of what is coming from you, from your truth, and what is coming from your stress, whatever the case may be. And, your messages from your intuition will only be loving. So our thoughts are not always loving. Our thoughts tell us they lie. Our thoughts lie to us. They tell us horrible, hurtful things, in our negative self-talk. And we can also forget, because we choose to forget, or because we have like repressed something that happened so long ago that pained us that we don't have a conscious awareness of it anymore. And so one way that you can tell that it's your intuition is that it'll always and only be loving. So if you hear messages like, something negative about yourself or about someone else, it's not your intuition, because even if your intuition has to guide you to do something challenging or difficult or something that someone else may not receive well or have a hard time with, it will share that message with you in a loving way. So the number one thing is intuition will always and only be loving. And your intuition initially, for most people, it's going to be a quieter voice. So our thoughts are very loud. We don't ever question when we're having a thought. When we want some French fries, we know we want French fries, right? We don't question, do I actually really want, we know we want them because the thought was so strong for us. However, our intuition is not going to be that loud. It's going to be a much quieter, softer voice, kind of in the background, because, we have thoughts behind thoughts behind thoughts.
Mhm.
So, it's going to be like one of those thoughts in the background that you'll kind of have to catch initially. And I'm sure, everyone does this already anyway. It's just a matter of paying more attention to when you're doing it and then, allowing yourself to discern if that's your intuition or if it's your anxiety or your stress. And with the clairs in particular, a lot of clairvoyance, and I think this is one that a lot of people experience because a lot of us experience clairvoyance in our sleep when we're dreaming and we're in like that other state. And clairvoyance, which means clear vision, is anytime you are seeing a vision in your mind's eye, which people are doing all day long, right? We're imagining ourselves on vacation, all these things. But it's anytime something shows up in your mind's eye that you didn't think about. And it's also some people can see out of their physical eyes, they're seeing auras and other energies and things out of their physical eyes, So it's your mind's eye and your physical eye. But a lot of people experience clairvoyance in their sleep. And in our sleep, a lot of our stress can show up in our psyche while we're asleep. So that's a place where it's really important to be mindful of, is this my stress or is this my intuition? And, if you're someone who remembers your dreams, just ask yourself that question. Was it your stress or your intuition based on how loving it was and or if it was connected to anything you're currently experiencing in your life as stressful,
Well, and that I've had conversations with people about this a lot, and we've talked about it a lot here on the show. Is dreams? It's very hard to distinguish what is like a message or your intuition or messages from the other side compared to your subconscious telling you you really need to get to the doctor. Your heart's not doing well or something like that. So how can you, like, when you're waking up from that dream, I do remember a lot of my dreams. So how can you really tell, like, is it, if you're stressed, you're waking up in like fear, or is it something like different?
Well, the example you just shared about like you need to go to the doctor because of your heart, I would say that is your intuition telling you, and that's not that's your intuition, especially if it's not something that you have a conscious awareness of in your waking life. If you're only receiving that while you're asleep, that is absolutely your intuition. And during our sleep, we could also experience clairaudient, where we're hearing things,
Yep.
with our inner ear. So I know for me, my sleep life is wild. I have experiences when I'm asleep, and I've actually had two psychics, and I don't go to psychics very often, but I've had two psychics tell me that I actually don't sleep much because my sleep life is so active. So how I recognize like an intuitive message from my psyche when I'm stressed out and I go to sleep and something, whatever is happening is something I can't understand or comprehend. It's like jumbled. That is absolutely your psyche, because remember, your intuition is going to be clear. You're not going to question, what does that mean? You're not going to have to guess or figure it out. It's going to be a very clear message. So one way to differentiate the two is the clarity, because I know a lot of times with dreams, they can be so confusing. We don't know what the heck, they can be so wild and make no sense. That is not your intuition. That is your psyche expressing something stressful. Your intuition will be very clear, just like you hear my voice right now and you understand the words I'm saying, it's going to be that clear to you. So that's why I go back to the example of if you're receiving a message that you need to go to the doctor and that's not something that you're thinking about in your waking life, that's absolutely your intuition. Is that a good example?
Yeah, that's perfect. Something I was thinking of as you were talking is like, I had heard this theory years and years ago that not everybody dreams in black and white. Not very many people dream in color. Not many people can hear in their dreams. I've always been able to do both.
Me too.
I've also been able to go back into dreams in my younger life. Now it's a little bit harder, maybe just because it's the times, our it's different. Like, life is faster now. So
hold on, you go back into dreams? Can you explain? I don't know. I've never had that experience. What is that?
So, like, if I'm having a dream and I want to see what's going to happen next, like if I wake up, I would tell myself, and maybe I just don't do this anymore. I tell myself, I need to see what's happening at the end of this. So I go back into the dream when I go back to sleep.
That's incredible. That's like an experience you're having. Like it sounds to me like you're tapping into like another dimension, another reality, another something.
It could be I'm astral projecting at that time and I don't know it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I never knew that most people don't dream in color or hear in their dreams.
That was a theory. And again, I mean, it may have changed over the years. I had heard that years and years ago.
Okay. My dreams are so vivid that if there's a television on in the room when I'm dreaming, I will make up a jingle for like a commercial that's playing on the television in my dream. Like, how wild is that? Like it's like real life. It's like real life.
Now, are intuitive nudges usually subtle or can they be like disruptive and loud?
Very good question. So they could show up in lots of ways. There are different types of nudges. There are the kinds of nudges that are like obvious, like the feeling in your belly, like that gut feeling that everyone has received, the butterflies in your belly, that's definitely a nudge. And it can also be more subtle things like, you hear a song that you've listened to 100 times, but that day, the message in the song, you receive it differently for the very first time, or it can be, like a sensory response that your body is giving you to a person who's in front of you. So when you're meeting for the first time, something you're seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, it can show up in so many ways. And so if it goes back again to that relationship itself and being mindful, like pay attention to yourself, which is so hard nowadays because all of our attention goes outward to so many things. We're distracted all day long. But if you could give that same level of attention that you give to social media, to whatever it is, to yourself and recognize, oh, like my body does this, or I respond this way, or I take this kind of breath, or I curl the toes in my shoes, or I raise or lower my shoulders. All kinds of things are happening to indicate to us how comfortable we are at any given moment. And that there's so many levels to it because once we know what we're responding to, we can then like pay more attention and understand, oh, why am I responding this way? Like what is being communicated to me in this moment or attempting to be communicated to me in this moment that I need to pay more attention to. So those nudges are it's like a greeting. It's like a hello. Like, okay, it's your intuition's way of saying you need to pay more attention. So when people get that butterfly feeling in their belly, it just means pay more attention because you yourself, that self-communication is being ignited and there's more information for you to get.
Okay. Now, what happens when people consistently ignore their intuition?
Oh, it's so unfortunate because again, the self-communication. I mean, the beautiful thing is intuition is so innate and it's so natural to who we are as human beings that it's never going to go away, but it is like a muscle. And so, the more you use it, the more the more you engage it, the more it will benefit you, the more it will expand, I guess is a better way to say it. So for people who are ignoring their intuition, especially like it's really hurtful to self when you know you're supposed to do something, like you have the intuition, and you still ignore it. It just sends, when I was talking about the messages that we send to ourselves, the positive messages I think I was speaking of earlier, we can send positive and negative messages. So it just adds to that long list of why we don't trust ourselves. And it just sends a message that, oh, I don't trust myself because I knew this thing was going to happen and I let it happen anyway. I didn't do anything to, to stop it from happening. And we all have those experiences when we knew something that nobody told us, like we just had a feeling something just wasn't right, but we may have ignored it. Many people ignore it, or maybe we acted on it, but it's really important to act on those things, even if you don't understand it in the moment, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment, even when it's inconvenient. I think inconvenience is a big reason. And also we often want to be polite, and being polite is not always appropriate, like follow your intuition. And we don't do those things. And so when you don't listen to it, you're sending a message to yourself that you don't trust yourself. which diminishes your intuition a little. So don't do that. Please don't do that.
That answered my next question, which is it like a muscle? And I think that's, any gift that you have, it atrophies over time. And even if you have it as a young kid, when you start growing up and becoming an adult and people telling you, you have to grow up and get a real job. And, that stress gets in the way and life gets in the way. I've believed for a very long time after I opened myself to psychic and mediumship that, the pineal gland is there. Science can never tell us what the pineal gland really, really does. And I unatrophied mine, uncalcified mine. And does it dwindle sometimes when I'm not paying attention? Sure. But it is something that you have to work at constantly.
You do. And I don't think it can ever atrophy to the point where it doesn't exist.
Right.
There's always going to be some of it in there because we're spiritual beings first. It's always going to be some of that in there. But it definitely can atrophy, and you can expand it, in the same way that it can kind of diminish. You can absolutely expand your intuition and expand your use of your clair and other intuitive, gifts. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think about it like, are you familiar with the reticular activating system? Because I'm like fascinated by this right now at this time of my life.
I don't think so.
It's called RAS for short, and it's proven by science. It is a way that our brain processes information. So because there's so much information in our environment at any given time, we subconsciously tell our brain what we want to be made aware of. So, the room that you're in right now, there's a million things that you could be aware of, physically and non-physically, but you'd be overwhelmed if you were aware of all of it. You wouldn't be able to function and navigate your environment. So you've told your brain, oh, I want to be aware of these things. So knowing that that's how the brain naturally works, I think that's a really powerful way to tune into your intuition and to focus on that self-communication. Because if you tell yourself consciously, if you, just repeat it before you go to bed, repeat it whenever you're thinking about it, write it down, whatever works for you. If you're telling yourself, oh, I want to be more aware of how I communicate with myself or what my intuitive nudges are, then your brain is now primed and it's going to show you that when it has an opportunity to. It's incredible. It's incredible.
All right. So what are some daily practices to help people hear intuition more clearly then?
The first one that I always like to share is to spend time alone, and I know that can be hard for people who never get time alone because they live in a household with many people. They go to work with more people. Maybe they take public transportation to and from work, but spending time alone is really so important because when we're alone, we get to experience ourselves differently than we do when we're with other people. Number one, we're more honest, more truthful, more relaxed, more open, more safe. And we also get to hear from that inner guidance more when we're alone because we don't have all the noise of all the people around us, and we're not having to, to shift how we're being to accommodate someone else. We can really just be in a space of accommodating ourselves and our needs. If it's emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, whatever it is, we can really be selfish and think about us. And I think selfish is a positive word, So spending time alone is a really big one. I would also say really pay attention to how much you are touch, tasting, hearing, smelling, and seeing, right? And we're doing it so much that we literally can't count how much it's happening. How many times can someone count how many times they see something? We can't. We just see, But if you can start to bring your awareness to how often you are having those experiences, oh, I'm feeling the wind on my arm right now. I'm feeling the sun on my left cheek right now. Or on the top of my head, the sunroof of my car, or, I'm tasting whatever you're tasting in the moment, I'm touching, just really give more awareness to how we how people experience their five primary senses is really powerful because we do it so often. We kind of take them for granted that we have the ability to touch, taste, hear, smell, and see because it's just, for most of us, it's such a natural part of our experience as human beings that we don't recognize just how powerful and beautiful and how much information we're getting when we're doing all of these things, you know? What's another tip that I can share? The question was to tap into your intuition overall or just the intuitive nudge?
Just intuition, yeah.
You know what? Intuition overall. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really about shifting how your brain thinks about it, you know, and knowing that we are all, it's our natural innate gift. Everyone is gifted with this, men, women, everyone, you know, and so really recognizing and seeing yourself as a spiritual being first and understanding like what does that look like for you and what does that mean to you, and shifting your thoughts around your perception of yourself so that you can experience life differently, you know, because it really does. I think one of the last things I say in my book, Your Intuitive Nudge, is that you're shifting your reality. Because when you tune into more of your intuition, that's really what's happening. You shift how you experience yourself. So you naturally shift how you experience life, you know?
Okay. Does intuition show up differently for each individual?
Differently how?
Like, for example, gut instinct versus like feeling in the head or something like that.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you know, it's also important to know you can experience your intuition from your head to your toe. Like that feeling that most humans can resonate with, the butterflies, the gut instinct, whatever, you know, people call that. That same level of awareness can be had in your left shoulder, in your right foot, in your elbow, your ankle. Like your whole body has the capacity to receive that information. So, yes, people will experience it differently for that reason, you know, and intuition, you know, it can kind of, you can kind of think of it like a language, you know, because as you get to know and understand your body and how your body communicates to you, you will recognize how your intuition is communicating, you know? So, like and it will be the message, it will be a similar message based on how your body is responding. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, it will be different. You know, some people have more awareness of certain parts of their bodies than other people. And so their intuition will show up in that part where they have greater awareness than someone else who has greater awareness in another part of their body, you know?
I've heard that all gifts can show up in different ways. I've had conversations with people about it too. Like, you talked about touch, and that people can have that as a gift and pick up on stuff. But even people that don't necessarily have that gift might feel a certain, we'll say, clairvoyance, for example, in the hand instead of the third eye, like I do.
Tell me more about that, because the way I understand clairvoyance, I don't know if you could feel that in your hands.
I've just heard different people tell me that they'll feel like I guess it's more intuition than anything. That they'll feel something in their shoulder, and then they find out that their grandmother broke their shoulder.
Yes. And I mean, intuition, the thing about intuition is that it wants to communicate with you. So it's going to use whatever way it needs to elicit a response from you. So if it's your grandmother, if it's, you know, it could be literally anything in your reality. It's going to use to communicate with you. If it's a sign that you see when you're on your way to work, if it's, you know, numbers. For some people, it's numbers. Some people, you know, they hear and receive a lot of messages and music, like I mentioned earlier. It's gonna choose the path that it knows you will respond to, because it is you. You know, it is you.
All right. Now, let's go a little bit more deeper. How can intuition help with relationships, career choices, boundaries, you know, the whole life spectrum?
Oh, in such beautiful healing ways, because your intuition will only guide you to what you're desiring, right? And so if you are wanting whatever desire you're wanting in any of those areas of your life, your intuition will guide you to having that experience. And I always want to make sure people understand that your intuition can only support you if you're telling yourself the truth. Did I say that already? I don't know if I said that yet.
I don't think you did.
But it can only support you if you're telling yourself the truth, because it's this really loving part of you. It doesn't know how to lie, do all these things that your brain knows how to do, right? And so if you're not telling yourself the truth, it's like you're confusing your intuition, because you may be exhibiting and exerting a lot of energy, behaving one way, and maybe even thinking and telling yourself something, but really what's true for you, and by truth, I mean, it resonates with you in a heart level, in your heart space. What's true for you is not what you're thinking about. That is not the thing that you're thinking about or how you're thinking about it. And it's not the behavior that you're exhibiting. Your truth could be something completely different. And so if you're wanting to find peace or abundance or, stability, you have to really tell yourself the truth about what you want and about where you are. And then you have to trust yourself that it will show up, that guidance will show up for you in the world, and these ways that we've been talking about, through your dreams, through your inner messages, through, numbers, music, something you're seeing, hearing, it will use anyway. Like I said, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Now, can intuition protect people from harm or misalignment in life?
Yes. And it's so funny too, because I feel like intuition gets a bad rep, because a lot of people will blame things that they didn't want to happen on their intuition, which is so odd to me. It's they'll say that their intuition is the reason this bad thing happened, when really, no, you not listening to yourself is the reason that thing happened. It's like they have a skewed perception of how intuition operates, but in terms of safety, absolutely. Because, I think many of us have had those experiences when you just know something's off, you just feel maybe you get goosebumps, maybe the hairs on your arm stand up. Those are also little intuitive nudges also. But maybe, it's just a feeling that you have, or you're talking to someone and you can tell that they're full of it, right? And so not to hire this person to do this job. You can hear it in the tone in their voice, even though they're saying all the appropriate words. There's something that you hear in their tone that they're not saying that is telling you not to trust them, right? So yes, intuition can absolutely support us in trusting us and being safe. Your question was about being safe. Yes.
Yeah. Now, have you ever ignored an intuitive nudge and later regretted it?
More times than I can count. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure I have too. I can't probably think of them right now.
Yes. I mean, for me, that's how I learned. And I think for a lot of people, that's how we'll learn. It's and it can be something like in a professional relationship, a friendship, something that you knew that this person or this thing wasn't going to be what you thought or what they said it was going to be. But you just kind of went along because you're being polite when maybe it wasn't appropriate to be polite, or, and you didn't want to call them out, or maybe you didn't want to be the only one because everybody else thinks this person is so whatever. You didn't want to be the only one to say, that person is not, so yeah, I mean, I've done it so many times and still do it present day, but I do it less than I used to. And, it happens very rarely now, but there can be times where I can allow myself to be more influenced by something outside of me. And so I won't listen when I knew I should have,
It's interesting you say that, because it was a couple months ago. My wife was really worried. A friend was not necessarily missing, but he was not at home, wasn't at work, and she was really worried. And then call it a reading, call it intuition, whatever. I told her, look, he'll be fine. They'll hear from him in a little bit. Everything's fine. And I have not listened to that inner voice for a very long time. So to be able to embrace that at that time was leaps and bounds for me.
Oh, congratulations. And so, of course, the friend was fine, right? The friend showed up and everything.
He showed up maybe 30 minutes later. Yeah.
Yes. And yes, just I really want to encourage you to do that more, because there's so, like, we keep ourselves from being able to have a fuller, happier, richer, more loving life experience, because that's what intuition is going to do. And I think back to your first question about why do people not listen to their intuition? And I've said trust, I think, was my answer. I think it's also limiting beliefs. Some people, you can have a desire for something and still think that you can't achieve it, right? Those two things can coexist and do coexist for a lot of people. And so that can connect to like limiting beliefs, not thinking that, oh, I can't have this thing that I want because I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't see the path forward. I'm not in the right city, state. Whatever things we tell ourselves, like none of that's true. It's our job to have the desire and then let the universe show us how we're going to get there. That's essentially what co-creation is about. In the co-creation process, all we have to do is want it, and then be willing to receive the guidance and the messages that get us there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, something we talked about before we got on here was being hyper fixated on something and not living life. So how does one use intuition in spiritual growth without going down the rabbit hole?
Focusing on yourself, really focusing on yourself, your real life 3D experiences that are happening. Because, spirituality is, we'll never know all the things. It's just not possible. Our brains can't even process it. At least not present humans, maybe future humans. I think this is the third time I mentioned future humans. I complain. maybe future humans, their brains, but our brains, we can't process that right now. So, I think it's really about being grounded in the experiences that you are having that relate to your real 3D life, not staying all the way in the non-physical. You have to, your spiritual world should benefit your physical life. It should show up in your physical 3D life in some way. So really staying focused on that as opposed to like only living and relating to what is non-physical, because this physical life is challenging and as tough as it is, it's also a beauty and it's a gift and it's incredible, and so being able to marry what is happening in your non-physical life with your physical life, I think is the best way to kind of stay grounded so you don't like go off the beaten path somewhere that that you can't manage well,
Well, and you mentioned, you said it multiple times, future humans. I don't think we're that far off from that future.
I don't think so either. They're coming quickly, right? They're coming quickly. Yeah.
Now, what role does intuition play in like the collective consciousness?
Oh, that's a good question. What role does intuition play in the collective consciousness? Because I think of intuition as such an individual, personal experience in your relationship with yourself. I don't think I've ever thought about that. Thank you for this question. What role does intuition play in the collective consciousness? Well, I guess if we think about the fact that what makes our collective consciousness conscious are like our kind of agreements that we all have, that we're going to die, that we're born, that the sky is blue, the sun is yellow, all these collective things that we have heartbeats, all these collective things that we all agree on. I would say one way we could encourage our collective response and experience of intuition is by practicing it on our own, because I ultimately think of human beings as one entity in all these billions of parts and pieces, but I think we're essentially like one entity. So if the masses can really focus on how they experience and process their own intuition in their own life, it's going to naturally help the collective to do the same.
Okay. Now, I asked a lot of people this question. What do you have? What is your hope that readers or even our listeners take from your intuitive nudge?
Oh, that they love themselves more. That's really, it's really a book that supports you in loving yourself, healing yourself, and supporting like whatever misconceptions and, hurtful perceptions you have of yourself, this book is going to shift that for you 100%. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably, and for me, that's how you get to your intuition. You can't, like I was saying earlier, you can't get there if you're not in your truth, if you don't deal with your shadow. And even though I don't even think I mentioned the word shadow anywhere in the book, but there are lots of exercises and there's a couple of chapters that deal with like getting to like the hard stuff, And I think a lot of people think of intuition as, because it's, spiritual and non-physical, they think that the way to get there is also non-physical and spiritual, but the way you actually get there is very practical and logical, and it's just in how you manage yourself. So, yeah, I would love if everyone that reads the book loves themselves more afterwards. That would literally melt my heart.
Now, I mentioned earlier that you practice Reiki. Has intuition played a role in your practice at all?
I don't practice Reiki so much anymore because I learned I was clairtangent accidentally through a Reiki attunement. So I feel like the universe is just telling me this is who you are. It's time. You need to know this. And with my great-grandmother, I'm sorry, reading palms, I feel like this thing I had with hands, like she had with hands too, in a way, Mm-hmm. So I don't do Reiki anymore. But when I was doing, and the reason I don't do Reiki is because I'm clairtangent, it's really difficult for me to be with a client and not talk, not tell them all the information that I'm receiving about them. And Reiki is traditionally a silent practice. The practitioner is just channeling energy.
Right.
But when I'm in that space with another person, I'm getting information about them. And it's information that is helpful for them to know. So it's like, I can't not talk, because my clairtangent sessions, I'm talking the entire time, telling them what their body is telling me. That's how I think about it.
Okay.
So I don't do Reiki anymore. I just share clairtangent readings with people, and I do them remotely.
Okay. So it's not so much a healing with Reiki energy. It's more so you're reading now.
Yeah, I'm reading now for sure. I stopped doing Reiki years ago. Yeah, I've been reading people for maybe 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, does that get exhausting for you at all?
No, it actually energizes me. I can't have more than like 4 clients in a day, really 3, because it's a lot. But so I can get exhausted in that way, because like the amount of information I'm receiving, it's so much information that it can be exhausting to me. I guess how is that exhausting? Maybe mentally, because it can happen to me in real time. But when I'm in the individual session with the person, I'm getting so much benefit out of it too, because I'm tuned in a very specific way, and it energizes me,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is about that time to let you go. So I want to give the mic to you to tell everybody where they can find you, find your work. The mic's all yours.
Yes. Thank you so much. So my name is Eboni Banks, and my book is Your Intuitive Nudge, a step-by-step guide to connecting with your intuition. And it's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. On my website, all the links are there. My website is bodywayintuition.com. And that's where you can book me for a reading. You can also book me for just a 15-minute chat, just to see what service I offer would best suit you. Because I also do intuitive healing mentorship, which is a group program. And I also do intuition coaching, which is one-on-one.
All right, Eboni Banks, thank you so much for being on ParaTruth Reborn.
Thank you.
All right, folks, make sure you check out Ebony's book, Your Intuitive Nudge, right there for you. A lot of great things coming up for ParaTruth. But before I go for the evening, I want you to really hone in into your intuition. Understand that gut feeling is there for a reason. Ebony brought it up multiple times that it is there and you should trust it. It can be a bad thing sometimes if you don't, but it was your also decision to ignore it. Just make sure that you're always paying attention to yourself and love yourself as much as possible and trust yourself as much as possible. But until next week, folks, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin. Talk to you guys next week.